All right, so this is Notes exploration. Started in about 15th, 17th centuries. We kind of ignore that now because you can just look it up in 5 seconds. Here is an old map, and you can tell there's a couple things missing. North and South America, Australia is not here. So all we've got is really Europe, Asia, and Africa. And Africa's looking a little special with this situation it's got going on. Asia, too, is looking a little special. Europe is looking almost like it's, about right. Everything else looks kind of a mess. All right. So what you need to remember is the 3 G's. God, gold, and glory. So those are the ones you're going to type in, I do believe, right? Yep. And I'll go into detail of these in the next slides, so I don't want to ramble off about it. Anybody need more time? Oh, yeah, you kind of do. That's right. In the chat, it's, yeah, you kind of just add another letter. That's funny. All right. So I'm going to break these down. So the first reason is God. So the plan here was to spread the word, essentially. So there was some competition between the Christians and the Muslims at the time, and we're talking about like them spreading out across the land. So they were the Catholics, the Christians at the time were kind of like, all right, this is concerning. What if we go out when we go exploring and, bring along a priest and, have anybody who we meet tell them about, God in our church and etc. So that was kind of the idea. Gets a little violent along the way. The idea is really, hey, if we reach more people, then we will kind of win the religion race of who has more followers. So, yeah, that's what that came down to. Let me put in, hang on, what was it? Yeah, I'm going to type in Muslims, so you can make sure you spell that right. So I typed that into the chat if you want to copy and paste it. It's not one of the hardest words to spell, but I mean, I can see. I think I put it in there too, that it doesn't need to be plural, just in case you accidentally leave that off, but I would still, like, anytime you see anything in the PowerPoint, I would type it as it is. All right. Who needs more time on this slide? Okay. The countries that were kind of funding this, doing this, it really varied whether they were violent about it or not. You'll see in a couple of slides some of the more, like, which countries were a little bit more violent about it than others. It really, it varied, and even within the country it kind of varied. Which, I mean, if you, like, even today, if you try to talk about religion between people, it can get super heated. So you can imagine that if you're trying to convert some people and they're not listening or whatever, that somebody's gonna get mad. In a sense. Alright. The next one was gold, and the deal is when we're using these three words, it's kind of more symbolic than, well, ish, than word for word in a sense, especially this one. So, yeah, they were looking for, the actual metal, but they also were getting items that they could sell. So there was this big movement for like spices and tea and stuff like that. And so in that sense, they wanted to get those items and bring them back to their country and then sell them. So in a sense, they would then get maybe not necessarily gold. It might be silver, it might be copper or whatever, but some kind of payment is really the idea here. So the more they could get, the more they could bring, the, more money they could make. And if they could actually set up a trading route where they could continue to go back, now you're looking at being able to make money over time. Does anybody need more time? Okay. And then just let me know when you're done, then I can, move on. Anybody else need more time on this one? Okay. I put this in already into here, so you don't have to type anything because I didn't have it word for word. But essentially, like, we have, famous people now. We have musicians, actors, actresses, whatever they're famous for, influencers, whatnot. So that's kind of who is famous to us. But at the time, the explorers, the ones who were leading the expeditions out, they were the ones who got kind of the credit, and they came back and people were like, oh, you're so cool. You went over to wherever you went. and they wanted to hear the stories and like adventures and whatever, because they're just, you know, living their regular day lives, getting up, farming some stuff, and then going back, right? So there's not a whole lot of, well, I don't know. I mean, obviously there's some excitement, but it's not as exciting as, oh, we made it around Africa. Oh, we found, like, out there's people in South America or whatever. All right, you don't have to write anything for this one because we're going to go into these individual ones in a minute. So the main ones we've got are Vasco da Gama, Magellan, Cortez, Pizarro, and obviously Columbus. All right, now we got right. All right, so hang on, let me check one. Nope. Okay, just kidding. Thought there might have been another map. And yes, this map is weird, where for some reason the ocean is brown and the land masses are, I guess, a greenish blue. So that's a little odd, but that's what it is. All right, so this guy, and you should just have to type in Gama, so Gama. He was the first to get to India by sea, so through the ocean. So before they were going, so this guy is Portuguese, so he's going from over here. Normally they'd go from here and they'd go across land up this way, and then they'd have to go and down. They might be able to go like down here and across, but and the issue is in this area is where you had all of the Muslims. So they would have to go through this area, and anything from them running into some kind of fighting, or they might even just have to pay money to pass through. So he's like, what if I can get there through the ocean and, you know, and then we don't have to worry about all this mess. All right. So he ends up going from here, kind of goes to around Africa here. I guess the wind started pushing him this way because it's, yeah, taking swinging a little wide here to come down. And then they made like kind of multiple stops along Africa down here. And then made it across to India. And so this, while it seems like the ocean would and sailing take longer, it was less dangerous and essentially faster. They could keep land in sight for the most part. Well, except for what he did over here. I don't know what that's about. But, you know, they could keep land in sight as they kind of go around and down. Can everybody hear me? Or some people, at least? Okay, I just wanted to check, because if you can't, well, I meant, like, if you can't hear me at all, then, you know, the important parts you probably don't even need to hear. It's just me rambling on. Alright. Hopefully we don't need more time on this, because I think it's just, yeah, you're just filling in the name, so it shouldn't be... Alright. Next we've got Magellan, and it is said with a J sound, So Magellan instead of Magellan. A lot of people end up saying that. I don't know. All right. So he plans to go around the globe. Now, the deal is he doesn't. Oh, let me click this one more time. There you go. The deal is he does not realize this stuff exists over here. He may have heard about it, but essentially he does not know, like, oh, all of this is going on, and he has to essentially go around this, right? He thinks this is much, much shorter. And the idea was, he was like, all right, we're trying to get here. So they wanted to get to like India and, well, not some of these islands. That ended up getting hostile. But definitely there were some spices and stuff over here. So he was like, hey, instead of going through all this, maybe it'll be shorter to go that way. And, to the west. No. And it was not in any way, shape, or form shorter. So they end up leaving Spain. They go down around South America, going up this way. And then they kind of come back around over here and get into these islands. Now, this is where it gets a little interesting. You can see it up in here. They meet this tribe, and they kind of, sort of befriend them. And the tribe is like, hey, well, the leader of the tribe anyway, it's like, hey, can you help us attack this other tribe? And just in a sense of, proving loyalties, alliances, whatever. That is where Magellan gets killed. Now, there's some debate about how he gets killed, whether he gets like clubbed in the leg and just beaten to death, or shot with an arrow, or with a spear, or something like that. But either way, he ends up killed. And so this orange line down here is where he's still, well, no, he's not going. His crew keeps going all the way around. Now, he is given credit for circumnavigating the globe, and so try to think when it's a circumnavigate, maybe circular. So for being the first to do this, even though he actually did not. And this was a big, like, deal between the Spanish and the Portuguese. They were like not pleased at him getting credit when they believed, they're like, you didn't even make it all the way. But in the end, they gave him credit. Well, history gave him credit, shall we say. All right, Cortez. This line is a little straight, but essentially this is kind of where we end up landing. So he is a conquistador. So like I was talking about yesterday, take conquistador and try to think about conqueror. He is a soldier and an explorer, so he is very well versed in killing people. So the Spanish were pretty violent when they came over. Any people they ran into, they were ready to conquer. And they technically had the technology to do so. Now, this is why when it ends up being Cortez and Pizarro, they come over to the Americas. This is why you get people speaking Spanish in, Mexico and downward, down in this area. So that is all Spain. And they wiped out the native populations. the native populations, so you'll also find it interesting, probably, that if you were born anywhere down here, in any, anywhere from Mexico, further down, I should probably plug that in, huh? That you might have Native American in you, because, of course, people from Spain ended up kind of coming over here, and so of course you ended up with some people were slaves, some people fell in love or whatever, but essentially some of these tribes are wiped out, especially I would say if you don't look as much like this very white looking dude, then, and you are from, down here, then you would probably highly likely have some Native American in you in one way, shape, or form. Which can also take us into the debate of, who really belongs here? Because some people might have more Native American than they thought they did. All right. So, if you ever do those genetic tests, if you have any kind of, lineage from down in this area, do not be surprised if you end up with some Native American in you. It makes sense. So, it'll probably take you back to Spain and here. Maybe some Portuguese, maybe some French, but essentially probably Spain, and then probably some Native American in there. So yeah. All right. Anybody need more time on this one? Make sure you spell, all of these right. I think you just need to do the name, right? Yep, you did. Okay, so that should be fine. All right, Pizarro, another conquistador, another one that's going to come over and just plan on taking everything over. He's going to essentially do the same thing. And do not ask me why this dropped off into, like, the middle of nowhere. I have no idea what's going on here. So, he ends up conquering Peru, which is down, like, the Incas that were in Peru. So that is down, like, I think down here. Yeah. So he gets over here, starts coming down, gets to South America, and they end up, I guess, rebuilding the ship. Taking it apart, rebuilding it on the other side. And then ending up in this area over here. And so I zoomed in a little bit in here. So, wait. Was he? Hang on, let me double check. Is he Spanish or Portuguese? I don't know if that is. I thought he was Spanish. Let me double check. Just the way this line is. Yeah. Okay. Wait. Yeah. All right. Just want to double check because this line was a little bit weird up here. I want to make sure, especially because it was a big deal back then. Like, if you were Spanish or you were Portuguese, you did not like each other. Like, you wanted to, you were essentially in competition with each other to get the most colonies, the most land, the most fame, the most gold. They were in competition for everything. That was like their football, their soccer, their whatever. And they had those things, right? Well, I don't know. So we're talking, when I say football, I think I meant soccer. But how you have different, sports going against each other, this is what was happening here. So it was like we're competing situation. Make sure you only have one Z and two R's, I think. Unless I spelled it wrong. If it comes through that it's spelled wrong and you spelled it like this, let me know. I won't be surprised if I got that backwards and put two Z's and one R. Alright. And of course, the guy you've been learning about since you were like in what, second grade, third grade? Nowadays, we try to say that he, instead of discovering the Americas, that he led to the general European awareness. In a sense, obvious, I guess the way they said it kind of made it more simple to remember. But what's really going on here is he discovered it for Europe. So when people are like, he discovered the Americas, you should probably tack on at the end, he discovered the Americas for Europe. So that they became, and if not, I mean, there was talk of this existing, right? He just kind of confirmed a lot of it. And so he made 4 journeys. Yeah. So down here and back, just, always looking for more. So he ended up in the islands down here and then in Central America down here a little bit. Some South America. So he didn't really make it up into North America, just kind of in here. So too, when people say he discovered America, it doesn't necessarily immediately mean North America, right? Because there's 2 of them officially, and now, if we're talking regionally, we'll also say Central America just to kind of pin down the location a little bit. Anybody need more time on this? There was a big concept going around at the time. Remember, we went over the economy. Money, I mean, it's like the most important thing at the time. People wanted to make money so they could eat, and rich people wanted to make money so they could have more money. So there was something called mercantilism. Maybe you could think about like mercantilism. So the idea was, and in a sense, if you were trying to save money and make money for your country, this makes sense, right? So the idea is you should export more than you import. So you want to sell more than you buy from others, which in that, in theory makes sense, because like if you're selling more, right, you're making more money versus spending. So that idea makes sense. They also believed that you should not be in debt to other nations. So a nation was stronger when they didn't owe money to other countries. And again, it kind of makes sense because people can't, or other countries essentially can't control you and your country if you aren't indebted to them, if you don't owe them anything. Unless you're a small country and you're surrounded by a bunch of other countries, then there might be a little bit more pressure than the economy. All right. By owning other lands, you don't have to pay the nation for their goods. So if you, own parts of the Americas, then let's say you get whatever you get from the Incas, right? And you take it back. There's a way of, okay, we're either paying for it and taking it back, or we could just take it and not pay for it and just bring it back. And that would be cheaper. So there's multiple incidents of this. This happens a lot in Africa. We'll go into that more when we do imperialism. But essentially, yeah. I forgot how much you have to fill in for this. So does anybody need more time on this? Hang on, let me see how much you need to fill in. Yeah, I figured. So we are what, here? Okay. Yeah. So it might take a couple more seconds. The problem with this is that it makes sense in theory, but it is very bad for your country, if you have to go to war with other countries because you're fighting over land. And that becomes expensive. The whole, taking from other people without their, consent and making them slaves. Not a very good look in history. So it's kind of like, all right, yeah, you might be making more money, but like, how good do you look taking advantage of other people? So a lot of this comes back to that, the idea of, should we be doing this in the first place? And of course, at the time, they're just thinking, and a lot of them are fighting anyway, so it's kind of like this is just another battle. Especially the conquistadors, they don't care about who they have to kill along the way. They've been in war, they've been in battles, so they're already, used to killing people. I think it's just one more slide after this. I do believe. And of course, with import and export, just for export, think exit. I don't know how to shorten import, or not shorten, but create a, what is it called? Not an analogy, but when you start the word with something else. Like how I say conquistador, and the word is conquer. So relating them together. But if you remember export as exit, then I think you should be able to remember that import is, bringing something in, because it's going to be the opposite of the exit. All right. Let me know if you need more time right quick so I can gauge how much more time I need to spend on this one. So anybody still need more time on this slide? And don't hesitate to say, I need more time, because especially the first time I go through this, I don't know how much time each slide takes. All right. I think this is the final thing. So we're using this slide just to compare how mercantilism, the idea of it, compares to, what the US does. Now when did I create this? This is created like a while back. So these numbers are a little different, I think. So yeah, so they're going to be different. All right, so make sure when you type in these top ones, you do need to put the decimal point. You do not need to put the dollar sign. So you're just putting 2.194. All right, 2.194. Hang on, let me see what else you're putting. So you're putting those two numbers and then this other number. Okay. That number. Hang on, I'll type it. So there's one, and there's the other, and then I think that's right. Okay. So if you look at these numbers, you can see we import more than we export. And we're considered one of the major powers. So the idea of needing to export more than you import to be a powerful country is kind of just essentially wrong. And this is definitely in the trillions, so there's a lot of zeros back there. We are the third largest exporter. I guess they're lumping the European Union, so that's all of Europe together, and then China. So I don't know if I would. Most people aren't going to put the European Union together. And that's like Germany, Spain, France, Italy. Normally you'd separate them out. So I would, I don't know if I'd put all those numbers together. So I would say it's China than the United States. But so the United States imports more than exports. And it does create a trade deficit of 540 billion. Now that was again at the time. So this is I would say probably 7 years ago. At least when I made this. So we do a lot of exports in oil. Definitely in in automotive is kind of one of the big ones. It gets kind of interesting when you go to other countries and you start seeing how much like a Chevy costs there and a Ford. Like if I go to Germany, right, here a Mercedes costs an absurd amount of money. I go to Germany and they've got ambulance that is Mercedes. They've got taxis that are Mercedes. So in a sense, it's kind of like the general car. It's not as luxury as it is here. And the same in the same way in relation to like Chevy and Ford, because they don't have that many over there. So, they're going to be like, oh yeah, I got a Ford Mustang, and they're going to be proud of that Ford Mustang. All right. So that's kind of it on this. So I'm going to stop the recording and deal with anybody missed anything.